Game 4, and the Ducks still played arguably their best game of the entire series. And that's obviously not on Andy Welinski, but it doesn't look great on Kevin Bieksa when a kid can come in and do the same job, if not a better job, than you can.
No, we thank him for his Superman punches, and he's always funny. He always would come in and do pranks with the Ducks, with the Anaheim organization, and those are always fun too. But just on the ice, I think it's time to move on to more of a younger group, unfortunately for him. The other comment that I wanted to make mention of here was Ryan Kesler playing 20 pounds lighter to add speed to his game. Obviously still coming back from that offseason hip surgery that kind of hampered him all season. We could look to him, he said, to be remaining at that weight 20 minutes lighter to keep the speed up. I love this guy. I mean, to talk about a guy that plays and leaves everything out on the ice and wants to win more than anyone else in the league, or right up there with everyone else who's at his level, it's unreal to me, man. I mean, that just shows you the dedication that he has, to the sport, to his teammates, and to himself to be the best version of Ryan Kesler that you could see. And I'm looking forward to him more now in the off season, or in the beginning of the preseason and training camp, to see what he's going to bring. Because, I mean, adding speed to his game is just going to make him that much better and that much more of a pest, I feel like, heading into October.
Yeah, I said earlier that I thought Corey Perry was going to be the biggest question mark going into next season. I'm going to have to rescind that, because I feel like Ryan Kesler is the biggest question mark going into next season. Are we going to get the Ryan Kesler of old who was nominated for a Selke Trophy before the hip surgery? Are we going to get the same Ryan Kesler this year, or is it going to be a guy who's kind of in between that? I feel like it's going to be a guy who's in between. I feel like he's going to be better than he was this year, because he's going to have that entire offseason and early part of the season to kind of still continue to rehab and get healthier. And, of course, like you said, he's going to be playing at 20 pounds lighter, which is going to help him out. It's going to be tough for him to adjust to that, but he's got an entire summer to do that. That's the big question for me. I'll ask you it, I think, and I guess everybody in the chat here. Do you think we're going to see the Ryan Kesler of old, where he was a Selke Trophy nominee? Do you think we're going to see the Ryan Kesler from last year, where he was clearly struggling and didn't look like the guy we expect from him, or is he going to be somewhere in the middle?
I think you're going to see a 50-point guy again next season. Yeah. I really do. I think you're going to see right around 20 goals, right around 30 assists. You're going to see him be nasty. He doesn't need to fight. He might take the odd fight here and there, but you're going to see him nasty. And when he's feeling good and he's not in pain, I mean, people don't understand how much that sucks to be in that kind of pain. I mean, I know I don't. Yeah. I've never had hip surgery. I had to relearn how to walk.
He had to yeah, exactly. He had to relearn his stride and to skate and to walk again. I mean, the fact that he was playing at all, clearly not at 100%, was incredible. And he was still having great games here and there. The question again is he going to be able to come back from that and be anywhere close to where he was? We don't know. I mean, the same question, I guess, is around Patrick Eaves as well. Is he going to be anywhere close to the guy we expect from him? Those are tough questions for the Ducks to answer right now. We really don't see anything until the first couple preseason games they play, and of course the start of next season.
Yeah, hopefully that he'll be back to where he was or right around it. That would make this transition into whatever type of system Bob Murray's going to force down Randy Carlyle's throat to spit out to his players. It'll make it much easier for them if they think they're mean and nasty and ready to go out and try to win a cup again. But that rounds out everything from our player exit interviews and our discussions with Bob Murray, or just talking about Bob Murray, rather. I didn't talk to him. I know Chase said earlier in the chat I need to ask him about what's going on when I see him at Starbucks again. I need to try to get there on Thursday for that one. Let's look ahead. Let's talk briefly about the draft. That's the next big day coming up, obviously for the Ducks, because they're not in the playoffs, unfortunately. And this is also notoriously a place where players are traded and big things happen at the draft, more so than at free agency, I feel like, in the offseason. Where do you see the Ducks slotting in? And I know we already got asked this question earlier when it comes to drafting. We want them to draft a center for center depth. But Bob's always been a big defensive guy. But then again, he's also picking guys like Max Jones and Sam Steele and Maxime Comtois. So is it more or less kind of like pick the best guy who's available, right? I mean, that's kind of what most GMs should do. Is that kind of what we can expect to see out of Bob Murray again?
I think so. Now, to just kind of break down what the Ducks draft is going to look like, up to the 20th pick right now is set. The Ducks currently are drafting 23rd. They can move up to 22nd or 21st if San Jose or Pittsburgh or both make it to the conference finals. Then the Ducks would move up. If both make it, they'd move up to the 21st pick. If one of them makes it, they'd move up to the 22nd pick. They can only really move from 21, 22, or 23. So we kind of know where they're going to be picking. At that point, I think with this year more than any draft is so interesting because I've seen guys who are projected to go in the mid-second round who on some mock drafts are projected to go in that 20 to 23 pick range in the first round. I haven't seen that in the last 3 drafts where there's that much parity from basically outside the top 10 all the way down to middle of the second round. So it'll be interesting because, who the Ducks think is the best player available at that point is going to be a lot different than, and say if the Sharks do pick around there, then who the Sharks think is the best player available. And I think that's going to be interesting because there's a lot of different names the Ducks could go. I still think they should draft a forward, and I do think it should be a center because of the lack of depth they have there. But, this first round especially is littered with defensemen and wingers in that early part of guys who are projected to go in that around that 23rd pick. I picked out some names that we'll get to in a bit, but it's going to be tough. I do think the Ducks usually go that philosophy where they pick the best guy available, but I think at least in the last few drafts from what they've seen is they've tried to draft forwards. You look at them drafting Sam Steele and Max Jones and Antoine Morand and Maxime Comtois with the first 3 picks of the last couple drafts. So they're clearly trying to restock the cupboards on forward, which makes sense, but there's still some holes that they have to fill.
Yeah, I feel like they're going to take, from what I've been reading about, I'm not a big prospects guy, as I've said before, but I feel like the one that I read about, and you said it makes sense that it's going to be either a defenseman or a winger, even though you think they should take a center. A lot of them haven't pointed towards, taking a defenseman, right? I saw that, I think, on USA Today's mock draft rundown. They're going to take a defenseman.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid for them to do that, but at the same time, I would like to see them, if they are going to do that they move a defenseman out of our system and fill in a forward hole that's going to be, needed. And you need to have another guy come in and play. I don't care if it's an AHL trade. We don't know who those guys are until they pop up, at the least at the goals level and make noise, let alone coming to the NHL and being great. It's another story. But if they take another defenseman, they got to move one that they're not 100% on to bring in some forward depth into this roster. There's going to be problems in the near future.
Yeah, and I think with this draft and I guess it's the same because we had already talked about Antoine Morand and Sam Steele, where they're listed as centers, but they're guys who probably project as wingers. Maybe Sam Steele can be a center at the National Hockey League level. It all depends on how he can translate his game. I feel like if we're going to start picking maybe some guys out that the Ducks could draft here, if a guy by the name of Rasmus Kupari is available for the Ducks at 23, which I highly doubt, but he, if he ends up falling a bit, I think he's the best pure center available at that point if he's still there. He's a guy that currently plays center in the Finnish league, and I feel like that's a guy who could project to be a center in the National Hockey League. When you look at the guys outside that, and some names that come up in Isaac Lidestrom, Ryan McLeod, Akil Thomas, these are guys that have played wing at times and could be wingers in the future in the National Hockey League. A guy, and I'm not just saying this because I'll end up be doing a lot of profiling him in the summer, is Akil Thomas with the Niagara Ice Dogs. He's a guy that a lot of mock drafts have the Ducks picking at 23rd. And he kind of goes with what the Ducks have been picking. He's an energy guy. He's a speedy forward. Offense comes first for him, but he is good in his own zone, and he can get back and he can back check. And he's a guy that can play center and wing. I feel like he's a guy that could work for the Ducks with who they've drafted. When you look at Sam Steele and Maxime Comtois and Antoine Morand and Max Jones, he kind of fits in with those types of players. And another guy, which some guys, including Corey Prodman, have been very high on it and had him early in the first round, is Dominic Bach, who plays I believe he plays in the Swedish Elite League, but he's a German right winger. And he's surprised a lot of people. He's not small at 6'1". He's a little bit on the skinny side, but he's a guy that's kind of jumped up the rankings all year. And you always look for those guys when you're looking at the draft and potential sleepers or guys who started out being projected maybe a 4th or 3rd round pick, and then they slowly move their way up because of the type of season that they're having, and that's been him this year. He's been a guy that surprised a lot. And he's going anywhere from early second round to late first round. So the Ducks could get him. He could be a guy that could be available at the 23rd pick. The last one for me, because I'm not going to go too in-depth and name a bunch of names, but Ryan Merkley is the biggest enigma going into this draft, and defenseman. And he's a guy, if you just looked at his talent, he'd be arguably the best defenseman available, especially offensive defenseman. There's no question on his skill level on the offensive side of the puck. He has probably the best hockey sense of any defenseman available. He has the best offensive capability. He's a guy who can be a power play quarterback. But the rest of his game defensively is poor and at times can be very bad. And that's not a good sign when defensively he's poor in the OHL. You don't know how that's going to continue to translate into the NHL, and you would assume it would just continue to get worse. And he has a lot of off-ice issues as well, with fights with teammates, not really respecting authority with his coaching staff. He's a guy that is being projected anywhere from going middle to late first round, all the way maybe dropping to the second round. If you're willing to take a risk, and this guy turns out, he could be the type of defenseman the Ducks have been looking for a long time. A guy, I guess we expected Brandon Montour maybe to be that power play quarterback and a guy who you really look for to just produce offense on your blue line. The Ducks could use that guy. Really, we talk about them not really having a guy who can put up consistently 50, 60 points from the blue line. If this guy ends up, fulfilling his potential, figuring out some things on the defensive side of the puck, he's going to be a real steal for whatever team gets him in. And if he's available for the Ducks at 23 or 22 or 21 or wherever they draft, it's a big risk to take. But I think with the prospects they currently have in the system, you can afford to take that risk and just hope, he ends up being a guy, an Erik Karlsson type of player instead of a Ryan Murphy type of player.
Well, there you guys have it. That's the prospect rundown. I don't want to pretend like I know half the guys that Eddie's talking about, because I don't. That's something I need to brush up on there, honestly. But I'm glad you know about those guys. So that really helps out everyone here who needs to know about our draft prospects for Anaheim. And shout out to Gordon Bombay. We understand, man. There's still some audio issues going on. I appreciate it. It's just poor internet connection for those listening. We apologize for that. We should be back and ready for next show. Obviously, we're going to do one relatively soon. But bear with us here. We got just a few more things we would like to cover. Do you want to hop over to free agency? That's exciting because the Ducks have some money falling off books, which means there's going to be room to add some players. And we've been talking about the scoring touch being needed, and not sure that not sure that we're going to get what we paid for next year. So we got to add maybe a player or two. Who are you thinking? We just talked about centers being an issue long term, but we also think the defense is probably the hole to fill right now. Let's start there. Who's the defenseman not named Ian Cole?
I was going to say
we'll be
who
fair,
I'm going to pick.
And not named Mike Green. So my pick and your pick gone. So obviously we talked about Mike Green being expensive, injury prone, and Ian Cole. I guess we'll see where he lands. Obviously, he's not up at that when you're talking about offensive production defensively. If you had to pick going around this defensive free agency, who would you go for?
It's tough because outside of those two, in my opinion, there's not really a lot of guys available that move the needle. It gets really bleak the farther you go down the list here, but if they're looking for a guy who can provide offense, like you said, Mike Green was an easy pick, and from there it kind of goes down. Brandon Manning out of Philadelphia is a UFA. He's a guy that plays on the edge, can provide offense at times. Maybe you look to go there, and I guess he fits the type of style the Ducks have employed for so long, where they're looking for those gritty guys who'd like to play on the edge. He would make a lot of people hate the Ducks a lot more, especially Penguins fans, because of the way Brandon Manning plays. So he could be a guy they go after. Thomas Hickey out of the Islanders, he's a UFA this year, put up 24 points in 68 games, was a plus 19 somehow on an Islanders team that just wasn't good defensively this year. I know plus minus pretty much means nothing, but at least that's something to look towards if you're looking for some positives. He could be a guy the Ducks look to put on their bottom pairing, as well as Calvin DeHaan, who also had 12 points in 33 games with the Islanders. So I guess I would go to those guys. Again, they probably are a better fit than Marcus Pettersson and Andy Belinsky, because they've played a decent amount of time. I think Hickey averaged just over 18 minutes with the